Hi, and welcome to one of our guest speakers for Careers in the Visual Arts and Portfolio class. Lisa DeNeffe is an amazing photographer and business person and has just so much to share, and I'm really glad all of you could join us today. Right here we see the page where the event is, and eventually the Zoom link will be replaced by the recording. And you can follow up and see some of her Instagram and her websites and the different things she's done to promote and support her business. And as you look at her website, you can just see the range of images that she's created to tell people's story, which I think is really one of the most powerful possibilities of photography. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Lisa DeNeffe.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa DeNeffe, and I've been a portrait photographer for about 15 years. And early on, when I was starting out, I took classes at Foothill, including a few from Kate, and learned a ton. And prior to being a photographer, I had a couple of other careers. I worked in public relations and marketing for big companies, including Nike in Oregon and also Esprit in San Francisco, way back. And I just always had this love of photography. My dad, who sadly just passed away about a month ago, got me a camera in high school, and I just fell in love with photography. But it wasn't really until the digital component came on the scene that really got me interested. I wasn't a big fan of being in the Lightroom. The classes I took, sort of intimidated me, and I just loved the whole idea of digital and being able to manipulate images and load them up on my screen and share. So that's kind of how I got it all started back. I was doing it as a hobby for many years, and then decided to try to make a career of it. And back in the early days when I was took Kate's portfolio class, I had to identify a subject matter. And for me, it was really like going after young children, like preschool age, because they're just such an innocence in them, and they don't have fake smiles, and their personalities are all out there for you, good, bad, and beautiful. So I decided to create a portfolio around preschool kids. And I, at the time, was living in Los Altos, and I decided to really target preschools. And at the time, I got various responses ranging from, we don't need a photographer, we have parents that do that for us, or in some cases they had like one of those school photography type companies that would come in and take everyone's photos like with an ugly backdrop. So I just kind of started out really going after it back then, and this was probably around 2005, 2006, and slowly built my business, and it just started to move into families, and I loved capturing the moment. And through the years, I've created, really wonderful relationships with some of my families. That's one of the things I'm most proud of, is now that I've built a pretty solid business. After I did it out of my home for a number of years, I decided to open a retail studio, which is currently at Town and Country Village right now, which it's now been closed for 7 weeks or whatever that is. So I'm not able to be working out of my studio at the moment, but I decided to open there at the end of 2011. And that was a really big, bold move of me to do, because I didn't know that I would grow the business and what that looked like with the overhead. But it did pretty well, and every year kind of got better. And then after a few years, it kind of stabilized. And so about 75% of my business is doing families and kids, and then maybe 15, I don't know if I have my percentages right, maybe 60%, 65% are family and kids, and then I have about 15% are high school seniors, and then about 10% I do corporate headshots, and sometimes those lead to, I didn't realize you did families, so it's like it's all kind of all sort of together. I kind of wanted to have a specialty, because I think that's really important when you're starting out, to really figure out what you love, and I didn't want to be, the wedding photographer, the bar mitzvah photographer, the pet photographer, the baby photographer. I wanted to kind of focus on what I felt like I did best. And I'm not a big fan of events personally. I just don't like doing them, although I do occasionally do them. Right now, if someone called me for an event, I would for sure do it because the business is really impacted right now with the pandemic. So if I share my website with you, should I do that now, Kate? Oh, I can't hear you.
I'm muted, sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that would be great. So click on the share screen and you can share some of your website.
Okay, share. So this website has been, it's just an ongoing thing. It's never done. I did a big redo on it a couple years ago. It's just a constant thing I think about and try to update, because when I go to other photographers' websites and I see like old blog posts from 29 or 2017, I just think it's really important to keep whatever you show fresh. And so I was blogging for a few years and then decided when Instagram kind of came on the scene that blogging wasn't really my thing, and I'm not a very good writer. I really struggle to even come up with like a sentence to put on an Instagram post. Like I don't have the gift of knowing how to convey things, whereas I think some photographers are really good at writing and they will write and write and write about their experience with a particular image, and I don't have that skill. So the way my website's laid out is I created these portfolios, family, babies, high school seniors, and about 3 years ago my youngest daughter came to work for me right out of college, and she's always been really intrigued with photography. And we sort of convinced ourselves that why not do weddings, even though it's a whole different type of photography. It's way more labor intensive. We decided to launch DeNeffe Studios. So if you click on my wedding portfolio, it takes you to a completely different website, which is called DeNeffe Studios. And this little picture here is me and my daughter. Well, after she and I started this, she went on to a different career. She's still helping me with weddings, but our weddings are pretty few and far between. We had one whole wedding scheduled for 2020 in Tahoe, and it just got postponed to 2021. So I think like many people, with the pandemic, I think that weddings are going to be not coming back for a while with big groups. So I thought it was important to distinguish a whole separate kind of brand for my weddings, which is why I renamed it DeNeffe Studios. And the way that we designed the website was that you could kind of go back and forth. So if someone were looking to do a high school senior photo and they may have an older kid that's getting married, they'll go, oh, I didn't know she did weddings too. So what I said I would never do, I'm actually doing. I have diversified quite a bit, but I haven't, it's sort of how the business has grown, and I don't take every single job I get offered. But I do, my whole thing is creating, I guess if someone asked me like, what would my mission statement be? It would be to help families and couples create legacy, because I really believe that we've become this digital, age, and we're in a digital age, and, we all take a million photos with our cell phones. And some people take the time and get those printed and they may create something with that, or they might make albums from it. But I think what I've really held true to throughout my entire last at least 10 years is like, I'm not really a digital photographer. And I think I'm like probably one of the only ones on the planet that says that, because so many photographers are all digital. And I'm saying, no, it's all about creating finished products. So if I can go back, let me see if I can get back to my website. I think we
right the next tab over. So if you guys go, next to your, I can see it there. So if you go up to the top.
Oh yeah. Okay. So when we designated what the portfolios would be, if you click on any of these, it kind of gives you a feel for my style. My studio in Palo Alto started off not really being a studio. It was just a very small, like 250 square foot space with a storefront. And about 2 years after I got into that mall, they offered me more space. And it was pretty crowded, just having that much space with people picking up orders. And so I said, okay, I'm going to dive into studio now. And that was a whole new learning curve for me to learn studio lighting and what to buy. And I did go back to Foothill, or maybe I think I actually took Keith Lee's studio class before I started the studio, but I was pretty much had no idea what I was doing. And it was a lot of like having friends come in, and I had dragged my daughter in with her girlfriend, like, let me just practice on you. I got to figure out how to do the lighting. And now that I've done it, it's really, really easy. In many ways, it's almost easier than natural light, because you just get your settings down and you can create really beautiful images with the right lighting. So that's, you know, my studio story. So when people, let's say they're having a baby and they kind of go to my portfolio, and then I promote that we do a first year package, and I show examples of, you know, we can be with your family for a whole year. We'll do 3 photo shoots. I've kind of changed it so that if they want to do maternity, they can do maternity and or 3 months, because 3 months is a really cute stage. But the big milestones, of course, are newborn, you know, sitting up on your own, which is usually 6 to 8 months, and then turning a year. So I have samples there, and then I add, we make a lot of albums for families. And so I put in a sample, you know, right here, I've got this first year album. I don't know why it's not going through like the maternity one is. That's kind of strange. It seems to be frozen. And then we've got this showing, you know, a couple, this is actually a pretty recent shoot that we did, because she did not follow the pandemic shelter in place because she really wanted maternity photos, and she's an old family friend. And so we used social distancing and went to a very remote place up in Santa Rosa. And so we weren't out in public. But now, as of last week, from what I understand, Governor Newsom has said that outdoor photography is now permitted. It's on the permitted list, but that really hasn't been defined. Like, my daughter said, well, that might just mean, you know, outdoor photography. Like, we don't, you know, so it's still a little dicey to know what's really permitted right now in the Bay Area. So I have, my seniors, I did the same thing. I decided, like, some of my seniors that purchased a lot of images and had us make albums, we created little mini albums for them to kind of show, all the different shots we got. Like this kid I'm showing you, I've been with his family for about 8 or 9 years. I started with them as a family, and he was their third senior. So I've done 3, he's the third kid I've done this for. I don't know if I already said this, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but one of the things I'm most proud of in building this business is my repeats. Like, my repeats, I keep track of my clients every year. And last year, I think I did around, close, like 95 families, and 70 of them were repeats. So it's like people have a good experience with me, and they come back, and they come back, and they come back. And then I get a few new clients here and there. And then I have to say, I'm not like a huge fan of newborn photography. It's probably my least favorite thing. It just takes a ton of patience, and most babies aren't very cute. So it's a little stressful to deal with a little 7-day-old little thing. But I never say no, because some of those families that I start with their babies, they end up coming back to me year after year. They're like, "You're our family photographer." I started this, I decided to kind of go after lifestyle photography, which it's been a very small amount of my business, but I want to show that I know how to do it. So I photograph designers, and I photograph models and dancers. And this was a designer who has a shop in downtown Los Altos, and she wanted to show these types of photos on her website. This was a blogger that reached out to me. She didn't pay me, but we kind of did like an Instagram thing where we tagged each other. Real estate agents, this was a real estate group. I actually worked with this man's family probably 8-9 years ago. And I worked with her son for his senior portraits. So it's kind of like, once you kind of get your name out there, people know about you. And if they have a good experience, they want to come back. So the different portfolios kind of show you the style of my work. And then if you scroll down on the website, we have kind of this how we work. And when we redid the website back a couple years ago, I wanted to be really literal, like these are the steps that we go through to work with us. And this is actually in my studio. This is my younger daughter, who is my wedding partner photographer. And this was just someone I grabbed, like I said, come over here and be in this photo, you know, because we had to stage it to show like this is us sitting in the studio, and behind them is a wall of images of a family. And so I learned early on, and I think I got this from Kate's class, we were looking at top photographers around the world and looking at what made them unique. And Kate pulled up I was writing all the photographers' names down, and it was probably after the class, I looked up a pretty famous photographer from Germany, and I don't remember the name, but they had like their whole front page of their website showed a wall of images. And I thought it just completely clicked with me. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to show that you can, and this is a tagline I've come up with in the last couple of years, is let your family be your art. Like, you know, you might have art up in your house. You know, I go into some homes where they collect really beautiful art, and they're art collectors, and some people just will throw up anything on the wall. And not everyone wants a big wall of images. They might just want one, or they might want it in their bedroom. They might be more private. But that's my big, that kind of what sets me apart, is I say that I'm a finished product photographer, and I like to create legacy for your family. Because if you just have a bunch of digitals, you know, the sad thing is no one will ever see them. And I'm guilty of it as well, because I've been shooting digital now for, I don't know, 12, 13 years. And so when my oldest daughter turned 25, 3 or 4 years ago, I went through this box, and I was like, I want to make a really cool board of all of like her life. And I started pulling photos out of her as a child and as a toddler, and fun photos. And then I got to junior high, and all of a sudden there were no photos. And my heart kind of sank. And I said, how could I just not have? I just know there's photos somewhere of her at prom, or swimming in high school, or with her boyfriend. And I realized that because I was doing this with 2 daughters that love to have their photos taken, they're probably the most photographed people in the world. I went into her memory box, because during her years of growing up, she would come onto my computer and say, can you print this one, this one, this one, and this one for me? And she'd have a bulletin board in her room, and I would print them out for her. And those are now in boxes in our garage. Both of my daughters live in San Francisco, and they don't have any room for anything. So we're storing all of their memories in our garage. So I got to go back to her memory box and find these pictures to finish telling her story. And that's when it kind of hit me. And I had this epiphany that you're just not going to have anything if you're just shooting digital, or if you're a photographer that only offers digital. You're just going to have them on your phone, or maybe on Facebook. And like one family said, oh, we'll never buy wall art because we have a big screen at home, and we want all the images to be on this rotating loop. There are people like that do really enjoy their digitals that way, but I'd say a majority of people don't. So back to we've got the planning session. We talk about the photo shoot. And I generally spend like 45 minutes to an hour with a family. I never like it to go any longer than that. And with little kids, I almost feel like 30 minutes is long enough, because their attention spans kind of go out the window. And there are photographers that have a whole different view on that. They may spend 2 or 3 hours with you, or 4 hours. I would kill myself if I had to do that, because I like it to be short and to capture the moment and just try to have fun. And then we talk about the order session. So this is me in my studio going through images to pick out what this client may or may not want to purchase. And then once their orders are completed, we work with different labs depending on what we're doing, whether it's canvases or metals or prints or albums. And then we schedule a time for them to pick up their order. But if they invest a certain amount of money, we will offer to come and deliver the product and install it for them. Let's see, what else do I have on here? So my wall art portfolio is here. And this is something where you can click on and you can see I probably have done like 350, 400 walls in the last 10 years. but I don't have photos of them all. And some of the photos aren't very good, or some of them were just sent to me on a cell phone. So I've kind of curated this to be my better wall art images. Whenever I can, I try to get a good photo, which is why if they're doing a lot on their wall and I show up with my installer, then I will photograph it while I'm there with my camera instead of a cell phone. Like this one with the dog was not so good because there's a lot of reflections coming in the window. Like if I really wanted a great shot of that, I'd go back another day, and I just didn't want to bother them too much. So this just shows some of the walls. This middle section here, these were all families I did last fall. This one here on the left, it's a mom with 4 boys and 4 dogs. And she wanted like a wall of images of just her dogs. And right after the photo shoot, the oldest dog died, and she knew he was really sick. So it was really important to her to get shots of her dogs. And then this one here on the right was actually 2 different photo shoots that we did over 2 years. Like they added to this wall and they want to keep adding to it. They want the grandparents to be in the next set. They've got 2 kids. So this kind of shows you, and I use a really great software program. I used to do all of this manually in Photoshop, and it was really time consuming, but there's a wonderful product out called Fundy, and it's a way to make albums really, really quick. And it's also a way to do wall mock-ups very, very quick. So all you need is you can have my client will send me a photo of their wall, and I'll say, for instance, this family here with the dogs and the 3 kids, what is your dimension of this wall? She was considering a bigger wall in another spot, and what are your favorite 6 or 8 images? And then we will mock it up for you so that you know exactly what a 20 by 12 with 3 16 by 16 is going to look like. This one in the middle here, they have a huge house, and they were in the studio and they ordered everything very quickly and rashly, and they just ordered a bunch of 20 by 20s and a bunch of 16 by 20s. And in a way, these are almost too small for the wall, maybe. I mean, they still kind of work, but we really do take time. And so I try to describe myself as more of a I customize the experience for you, because it's it's pretty labor intensive. I first get contacted to do the photos. I schedule a planning session if they'll take the time, which that could all be changing now with the COVID. I don't know that people are going to want to come and sit in my studio. So I'll probably be doing more of these types of things where I'll be talking to them on Zoom. I can be pulling up my website for them. Now that I know how to share my screen, thanks, Kate, because I'm new to Zoom. I've only had like Zoom happy hours with my friends. But I have a good friend that's a photographer in San Diego, and we collaborate and talk about things all the time. And she does her order sessions online, just like this. Like she pulls up her Lightroom, and she doesn't send online galleries to anybody, but they can like sit and go through the images together. So that's something this last 7 weeks have been, I've been thinking all of this through, like, what does the world look like going forward? Because people may not want to come to the studio. People may not want to come in and sit at my desk with me to pick their images. And I don't want to lose the sales that I get, because sending online galleries, I think, are just, you just kind of kill the sale because they can't get an idea of what they could be doing with the images. So these are some more wall art ones that we've done. This is a newer one. This family in the middle, this is to show this is like the same family over 8 years. So they started with this smaller one, and then they did this bigger one like 2 or 3 years ago, and then they moved it. They have a pretty big place, and they moved this one down to their basement, and then they had us do this one at Baker Beach in November, and it was just a freezing cold, windy day. They ran late. I had literally like 30 minutes with them, and their hair was blowing all across their faces. I mean, it was kind of a miracle that I got the shots I got, and that they liked them as much as they did, because they decided to do this whole other wall with them. And what else? I think having, as you're starting out, I think as you get nice feedback from people, it's really important to collect testimonials. And so I've been doing that over time. I've been collecting them, and I really think it's important that they're real and that you show like who they go to. So my testimonials, these are all actual photos of the people that are saying what they're saying. They're nice, kind words. And let's see, what else?
So can I ask about, so we see you have the website and you have the work, and what is your balance between sort of the photography and the business in terms of any, and we'll talk about the normal time. I know now is quite different, but over the years that you've been doing this, what's the balance between business
Well, for a long
and
time, oh yeah, so
creativity?
say that again.
Between business and creativity.
You know, I worked my butt off for a lot of years, like tirelessly, like hours and hours and hours. I wasn't really making much money. It was just when I was running around those preschools, and then when I was doing like the digital thing. And it finally, the last like maybe 3 or 4 years, it just kind of balanced out. And part of it's always having one really good employee. And so I've had the gal that I have right now has been with me, I think it's coming up on 2 years this month, but she didn't start full time with me because my other full-time person was phasing out. And she loved photography, and she came from, she graduated college. And so I guess my answer is having someone really good to help you, because I feel a huge freedom to just do the shoots and have the relationships with my clients. And the workflow, once we do the photo shoot, we upload everything into Lightroom. And then when it's like right now, we're not busy, so I can do this, but she would go through and go through 300 images, and I would completely trust her judgment because she's been with me long enough to know. And she'd narrow it down to the best 50 or 60 or 70. And that's controversial because other photographers will say, never show your clients more than 20 images, but we always show more, and we try to not overwhelm them. We put, like, if it's a family with 4 kids, we'll have like the 12 best of each kid in a series, in a collection, and then we'll say, here's the family ones. So Haley was doing that for me. And then we have a high school intern that is going off to college. So we usually have a secondary part-time person to help with getting the images down to a good number. We're just testing out a new person at the end of last fall, and we just realized that not everyone fits what you need. Like, she just wasn't really getting it and wasn't really doing a very good job with the galleries. And so right off, I'm like, I don't know that she will get good at them. Like, I don't know if that's something we should have her do. So once the images were all culled down to a certain number, if it was a really busy time, I couldn't always do the order sessions. So Haley would do them, and she got trained to do them. So we would go through the images, and we'd have a rating system in Lightroom. And we start with, if it goes into the gallery, it's at least a 3. And if it was one that we really liked, we put a 4 on it. And if it was a 4, we would make a black and white copy to show them what that would look like. And then when they would come into order, they would sometimes be overwhelmed. Often they're in tears, they're crying, because we always would put music on with the gallery. It's like we play a slideshow, and the moms would start to cry, and we give them Kleenex, and like, how am I ever gonna pick? There's sort of this overwhelming feeling of that. And we're like, don't worry, we'll take time with it. We'll really figure out what your favorite ones are. So Haley would help with the order sessions a lot. And in some ways, some people just kind of stressed me out a lot. Like, some of my clients I just knew would be harder. So I'd say, will you please do these order sessions? And I was paying her commission on the order sessions based on how much she would sell, but neither of us would ever pressure anyone. Like, I wouldn't say, like, you want to buy 3 12 by 12 medals, but you really should get 3 20 by 20s. We never ever would say that. It's all about what their comfort level is, but it's never comfortable when people are spending money. Even though a lot of my clients are really high end and they have a lot of money, it's never really that easy to go into the order session. It's a little, and then I hear arguments like, if you're the artist, you shouldn't be selling your work. Someone else should be selling it for you. But, Haley has the right amount of expertise to help them. And they'll say, well, what do you think between these two? What if we cropped it this way? And she would show them that. We even got to the point we were so streamlined that I could be sitting with a client and they could say, well, maybe these 6 images we want on our wall. And I would download them, and our computers, she's at a different computer than me, and she could literally pull them up as they were there, mock them up. And I think it's it's kind of good and bad because it's showing how quickly we can do something. Like we can just show you like that. Like it kind of, in a way, it sort of takes away from, wow, it took them 5 minutes to make up a wall. So we were kind of judging based on on the client whether to do that or not. But often they would come in and we wouldn't do that. And we'd say, tell us what your favorite 8 images are. Sell us the walls that you're thinking you want these on. Then she would come up with a number of different designs. And some of them I liked and some of them I didn't. And I'd say, this is like, we're going to overwhelm them. Send them these 6. Don't send all 12. Like they're not going to want that many. And then we would email them to them and they would have some time to think about what they wanted to do. And often they'd come in for a second order session to finalize it. So back to the question, I know I'm getting off course here. Talking about my workflow. Yeah. I feel like I have been really, really blessed to be, I've had complete meltdowns over employees leaving and, oh my God, I'll never find anyone as good again. And the gal that I have now is like the best employee I've had ever. And that includes my 2 daughters that worked for me, and don't tell them, but it wasn't easy having an adult child work for you because, especially my younger one who's really talented with photography, we're like too much alike and we kind of butt heads, and it was not it was kind of stressful the year she was with me. But she helped me redesign the website. She had gotten a design degree from UC Davis. She knew Illustrator, she knew Photoshop. We decided to build this template with a company called Show It, because a lot of photographers use Show It, and she researched that for me. And it took, a couple months to really get it to where I wanted to get it. And now anytime we're updating it, it's always Haley updating it. Like I could figure out how to do it, but right now I'm just trying to give her as many hours as I can. And I'm actually paying her full time. So she's really working maybe 1/3 time. So I'm always like going back, like, how can we fine tune this and make it better? So one thing we both did last couple weeks ago, we listened to one of those free podcasts from one of the companies, and they said, you have to have a call to action on your website. And I realized, like, what's wrong with me? Like, I've had this website for 12 years or however long, and I don't have a call to action on my website. Like, how could we have missed that? So we decided, she went in, and when you go to the portfolios now, there's actually a book now button that you can click on, and it takes you directly to our contact us page. And they're not able to like book a photo shoot on a specific day, but they can actually like contact us, where they don't have to dig for it or go, how do I reach this photographer? And they don't look up and see the contact us page is up here. And we get people that contact us that are past clients, and they'll still go through this step, or it might be someone that's heard about us, or they might have walked by the studio. So the creativity, for sure, I go through stages of burnout. Like, I get pretty burned out. Like last year, it was a really weird year. It was very, very quiet and slow. And I was, for 6 months, I fretted over how slow it was. I was like, what is wrong? Where's everybody? And I started getting these like insecurities about, oh my gosh, why are people not booking me? And then by July, it kind of like a light switch went off, and I got extremely busy. And for the first time in a while, I took a trip in November with my husband, and we just went somewhere. We went to Hawaii and like did nothing for a week. And so I kind of got through the first, craziness of getting all that done. And then I came back to more craziness because a lot of people needed, a lot of my families have kids in college, and they couldn't do anything till Thanksgiving. And I had to do 2 photo shoots on a pouring, raining day. And there was no other way everyone's like, this is the day, it has to happen. One of which was the family with the dogs. So she fell in love with the images. It was like practically raining. It was super wet, and she bought a ton. And then the other family I did that day really didn't like the images. She's like really like, oh my gosh, I know it's not your fault, but my son took a shower right before you got here and his hair was wet. My daughter didn't like her blouse. Everyone was in a bad mood. I'm so mad at them. And, she bought one image, and it was for a holiday card. But so I have, back to this call to action, we have it now on the website in every single portfolio. There's a book now, book now, book now, so that people can do that. The other thing we added recently was this gift card idea, which I haven't sold any. I offered like a big discount on gift cards for Mother's Day, and I didn't sell one. And that happens a lot. Like I try things and they just don't work. Like I have these ideas, like I'm going to start a whole fitness photography business, and we just do a whole bunch of shoots for free. And we bring in like people from Barry's Boot Camp and Soul Cycle and friends, and we get these beautiful photos, and then no one books us. Like it just, you know, so I've kind of learned through the years, like you just never really know what people are going to want. But the gift card was something we hadn't done. So now we have this lovely landing page. So last week or 2 weeks ago, Haley went in and took a picture of this at the studio to kind of show what a gift card looks like. And it's like, you know, this is like another way for them to contact us. And I do, as far as advertising goes, I do Google AdWords, and I have been for years. And for a while there, they charge you by the click, and I was probably averaging like $100 a month. And it's a very complex, confusing thing. I don't know why it's so hard. And they just sent me a survey about it. Like, what do you think about it? And I don't do them. Haley's been doing them. And she goes, oh my gosh, it's terrible. It's not easy. It's really hard to figure out. It's super confusing. So I had her put the survey in to give them feedback. But right when the pandemic hit, I paused all my ads because I'm like, I was up to spending $300 a month. And I'm like, I don't have that money right now. So I'm going to just pause them. And so we did that. What else? Any questions? I'm talking a lot.
No, that's good. You've been fabulous. Let's have you stop sharing your screen so we can see your face. So on the top, there's a red button and you stop. Okay, perfect. Oh, well, where did you go? Hold on. There you are. Okay. And so I have questions from different people. There may have been a couple when I had a little computer glitch. So if I don't call on you and you had a question, please add it again into the chat. And the first question comes from Alexander that I have. And so if you want to unmute Alexander and ask your question that you have in the chat.
Sure. Yeah. So my question was, as someone who's also interested in starting a business based around my art, and I'm not a photographer, but I intend to get into like designing, like video game design, and creating that kind of product. What would you say are some important steps for starting your own business or maintaining like a successful one?
Thanks,
I don't know much about that world. My husband has been in it. He worked for NVIDIA for a long time, the whole gaming thing. I think if you're really passionate about something, then you do well in it. I think you just, when I look back at my journey, like I just had huge passion for it, but I also had the experience of working for big companies and that were really, you know, had tons of money to like, have packaging be good and branding. But some of what I learned at those companies, I carried into being a business person, because I know I'm not the best photographer out there. I'm sure I know there's a ton of talent. And then you have to really value what you do to know what to charge. Because I think pricing is one of the hardest things in the world. I hate it. I fret over it. Even every year when it's slow, I say I should have all digital packages. I have to do them. And whenever I do that, it just kind of goes against what I want to do. And I get this kind of bad feeling, like you kind of be instinctual about what you're doing. And like, if you feel like, I would get this sick to my feelings in my stomach, like I'm offering these and it's not really what I want to be doing. And I hear, I get opinions from people. I think it's good to look at who else is out there doing what you want to do some kind of level of comparison. I did that a lot in the beginning. I don't do it really anymore because it kind of drives me nuts. Like I'll see some really talented photographers on Instagram and they'll be so much cheaper than me. And I'm like, oh my God, like they're so talented and they're charging like nothing compared to me. But then I try not to, like, I've kind of, in a way, I've put my blinders on because I think I could drive myself crazy. And I like to hear what people's opinions, like my older daughter, not the photographer, she worked for me for about a year, and she's young. She's not that, she's in her late 20s. And she said, Mom, not every family like us, like if we're just starting out looking for a photographer, we're not going to spend $3,000 on wall art. Like, we're just not going to. Like, what about people like us that want to work with someone like you? Like, you're kind of missing this market. So she kind of planted that seed with me, and I started thinking about it. And I'm thinking about a way to maybe have an introductory offer that might be a really short session, like have an experience with me and it's 15 minutes and it's a few $100s and you get a few digitals, just so that if someone's really looking for that, they won't like go to the next photographer. But as far as your business, I don't know much about it, but I think one thing I would recommend is just following your heart and really looking at people that are doing what you're doing and what's going to make you different, like what's going to set you apart, that's going to make you different. And for me, I think, you know, because I'm a really social person and I like people and I remember things about them, not always their names, but I think that that's helped me grow my business, because my families really enjoy their time that they have with me. Like I try to not make it stressful, and I realize, you know, I have read up and when I hear about other photographers, like I think the experience is so important. So whether that's follow up right away, that you don't make people wait more than a day to hear back from you, like just basic business things, like you don't get an email and wait 5 days to respond. Although I did that to Kate because my dad passed away.
You knew I'd come back to you.
Yeah, I had a reason. My dad died, and I was like totally like, oh. So I wasn't, but usually I'm like really, if I get emails, I try to address them like right when I get them, like even within 5 minutes, because
you're hitting on a lot of good business things. I mean, one is looking at the marketplace and seeing where you fit into it, being true to yourself, which I hear again and again from what Lisa's sharing with us, and looking a little bit at who else is there, but also not looking too much, because you don't want to be them. You have to be yourself, and you have to be true to yourself. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Jack had a question. Jack, do you want to share your question? Thank you, Alex.
I just wondered, do you have any trouble maintaining the colors from digital to print products, you know, and like, do you ever work with a printer or whatever to make sure that the wall art, for example, maintains the colors and the look you want it when you have it on screen?
You know, a few years ago, we struggled with that a little bit. Things were kind of coming out, like some of my black and whites were coming out with like a sepia tone on them, but we've pretty much gotten it down really well. And when we use the labs that we use, we'll say color correction or no color correction. And we always say no color correction because we don't want them putting some filter over it. You know, I look back at, maybe this is a question for Kate, because, you know, I know a lot of photographers will put their name on their products, like on the back of their product, there'll be like a label. And I have never done that. Like it's just something I just have never done. I have had very few problems with my wall art. And both times, like a couple things happened. Like I have this one product I sell that has a mounting block on the back and it got knocked off, but I kind of stand behind my work, and I always will replace anything with no questions asked. And generally my lab never charges me if I show a supporting document, or if an album doesn't get printed right, or the colors are too dark. And anytime a client is not 100% happy, I don't take the time to put this big disclosure on my website. Like I 100% guaranteed satisfaction. Like I don't overly promote that, but that's like, I'm kind of the Nordstrom of photography. Like if you're not happy, even to the point where I had I know this is going off subject a little bit, but I had a client that during my really busy time wanted to book me, and she emailed me like 50 times about my pricing, like over and over, like I really only want to spend about $500. And I said, well, I'm probably not the right, you know, I kept trying to talk her out of me, and she kept pushing. And finally, at the time that she came in to do the photos, I told her she had to do them with my daughter, because my daughter was my second shooter. And she goes, okay, that's fine. And then they came into order, and she brought her dad with her, and they were, my employee at the time said they were so rude. They were like, we hate these, the color's really bad. Why didn't you tell my daughter to wear a different colored dress? Like they were really, really unhappy, to the point where my employee felt really uncomfortable. And I said, you know what, they're really nice images. They're just like exactly what I would have gotten. And I made the decision, like, I don't want to work with them. So I called the mom and I said, you know, I'm so sorry you're disappointed. I'm going to refund you. And she done like a mini session for $150. Like I did not want to deal with this person. And she just almost like flipped her lid. Like, how can you, it was like I was firing her. And she, even though she was just like, you can't do that. I like some of the images. We have to do a reshoot. And, you know, and it was just like, okay. And then of course I didn't want to say no because I didn't want a bad Yelp review or someone mad at me. So I agreed to do another photo shoot. We went through the whole thing again. And it was me, not my daughter. We got these beautiful images and she put her daughter in a different dress. And then she came in without her dad. She came in with her husband and she was looking at him. And then she's like, these are great. And then she went back to the old ones and these are great. And in the end, she bought photos from the first shoot. She bought like 7 images from the ones my daughter took and 2 from me. So you kind of have to deal with, you're kind of dealing with crazies when you're open to the public. There's very few of them. But back to your quality issue, ironically, I got an email last week from a client and she said, can I get the digitals for the wall art that you did of my sons? And I remembered her and I remembered the photo shoot. And I remember, like, which is great. And I go, do you know when it was? And it was 2010. So it was 10 years ago. And she said, they're discoloring. They just don't look good. And I had her take a picture and I'm replacing them. And I found, and I at the time I wasn't even giving, you know, now if you do wall art with me, anything you purchase, you get a digital just for your own archives. I offer that. But so now I have to go in and we went back to 2010 orders and we were trying to find the paperwork. It was before I even opened my studio. That's how long ago it was. But I was able to get back to it. But I didn't know that I could. Like that's another thing with storing images. It's sort of a daunting thing. Because I had a hard drive that got dropped by a Mac expert that came in and it had, was when I first opened my studio in 2011. So it was like 2011, 2012. I had a lot of clients and he came in to help me with my wiring and he dropped the hard drive on the ground. And it's like, I can get images off of it. It takes hours to load. It's just kind of this, and I'm using a crash plan right now. So I have things backed up in more than one place, but it still makes me nervous. Like I don't completely trust the cloud. So that's a much longer answer. Sorry.
Well, you know, it talks about trusting who you work with, that you work with the same printers, you get a workflow down and you make sure that what you get comes out. But then also that idea of really giving a guarantee that, and if you're going to work with people and want them to be satisfied.
Right. And occasionally, you know, a kid's in a really bad mood and is having a meltdown and the parents are so stressed out. And I said, you know, we're just going to do this again later. Let's just pick a different day. Like, and I don't charge them extra for that. Like, I want it to be a good experience. I don't want it to be, so occasionally I do reshoots and that's just part of what I have to do, but I don't want to go into it saying, if things don't go great, we can always do a reshoot because then they're thinking, well, okay, we get 2 shoots with her if we really complete. So I kind of am careful with how much I offer and I don't have a contract, which I know I've been kind of told that's not good. I don't have, like, I've come up with a policy sheet, like don't pull out your cell phone when you're on a shoot with me. And I have like, kind of like, I started using it and then I don't use it. And so far, you know, sometimes if it's with a client I've had for 5 or 7 years and like the grandpa pulls out his cell phone, like I'm not going to shut him down. Like, okay, whatever. He can take a, you know, use, I don't like to confront people, but when you get a shot all set up and you get these 2 kids and they're in front of this pond and they're looking perfect and they're looking at you and the mom comes up behind you with a cell phone, it's like, no, you can't, you know, I say, please refrain from your cell phone until the photo shoot's over. You can do as much as you want, or just take one now and then put your cell phone away. And so that's one of my pet peeves is the whole cell phone.
Stealing the picture that you set up.
Yeah, exactly.
Maria, you had a question. And I think you have sound?
Yes, I do. So thank you. So did the experience from your previous career help you in your photography career and forming your own business? And if yes, how?
Well, you know, I learned to work really hard. When I worked at Nike, I was working like 10 hours a day and I had to be there and I had to travel and I had my first child. So I had like a lot of resilience and work ethic. And I had to deal with lots of personalities and I didn't really, when I got the job there, I wasn't a sports person and I had to like step into this role that was just completely over my head. I was never comfortable in the job, but I learned just how teams work together and how they think. And I think it helped me with my understanding of people. My degree, I got a degree from UC Santa Barbara, and while I was there, I wanted to quit and go to Brooks Institute to be a photographer. And my parents didn't have that kind of money to support me in that endeavor. And so I was like really searching, like, okay, if I'm not going to study photography, maybe I'll study film. And so I took film studies, and that was not what I wanted either. And then I kind of fell into communications. And I don't know how much I learned because it was very theory based, but I think it's really just really important to really try to relate to people and not intimidate them, and know when to say things. Like sometimes I'll do headshots and I'll ask a question or two. And if they're not chatty, I don't keep asking them questions because I could just tell they don't want to talk to me. And then other times they're very, like, oh, I've got 2 kids, and oh, where do they go to school? I know someone that goes there, like, I'm in this community because I've been in California now since 1994, so a lot of years. So I know a lot of people from doing this type of work. But back to the question, I studied, like I said, I studied communications. I was a publicist for a couple companies. But what I was best at was really the relationships. Like, I think I would get the award at Nike for having all these editors show up to events that I would put on because I was really personable. So I guess that's the one thing I learned, was to just really try to be positive and know how to communicate with people. And also that to look at the importance of a consistent image, like whatever it is you're doing. Like I decided to change my logo, and that was a huge endeavor. You can't just have 2 logos or 3 logos. You have to only have one, and then it's everywhere. And how do you take it from your website to your printed materials to your, Google ads or whatever it is? So I learned that you cannot, and I've taken some photography workshops and things and gone to shows where you hear that story. It's not an easy thing to start with one and then switch over.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Sure.
So a last question, Lisa, I want to ask. So people here are all starting out, and many of them are going to be starting their own businesses. Is there any advice that you would give to someone who's just starting out, and things that you'd want them to remember as they were doing it?
Well, kind of what I said earlier is to follow your heart. And really, I think that entrepreneurs that are successful, like, really believe in themselves, because I don't know where I got my confidence. Like, I think I got it from my parents, but I was very, when I decided to open the studio, and put my name on a building, and like, I was so sure, I just knew that I was going to be successful. Now, after I'd been there 6 months, I'd only gotten 10 new clients. Like, I would have gone out of business had I not built the business before I got there. But so I think it's like staying true to yourself, being, like Kate said, being aware of people that are out there doing what you're doing. It's super competitive. And then now with the pandemic, like, I'm even looking at how am I going to recreate what I do, because the new normal may not be normal for a long, long time. And that even means, like, maybe not having my studio. I'm in the middle of a lease, and thank God it's, it's over in January, because my overhead's really, really kind of killing me right now. And I have to kind of look at that, like, what does that look like? Are people going to be back at my mall walking around and having ice cream? And even though I don't get a lot of walk-ins, it's like having a presence and having a retail space, I think, elevated me for sure. Like, it definitely grew my business, because I was working out of my home for up until 2011, or till end of 2011. So I think, follow your heart, but also if you're a creative person and you're an artist, you can also look at having another job that's your full-time job, and this is your part-time job until you can get it where you want to get it, because it's hard. It's hard to make a living as an artist. And I had a lot of support from my husband while I was raising my kids to really, not have to be bringing in a big paycheck for a few years there. So I was very lucky. And I'm also probably older than most of you, but, it's been a lot of years to get to where I am. And now I'm just, like I said, just as I'm telling you, I'll tell myself, like, whatever business you're going to do, be creative in how you can do it with this pandemic. Because I heard on the news today that Twitter has told every employee, like, you never have to come back in again, ever. Like, you never, ever, like, not in 2021 or 2022. And we're trying to plan a trip with my older children, and they all still have their jobs, and they are like, let's go somewhere like Oregon, and we don't mind driving. And they're all have this new sense of freedom, because even though they're still working a lot, they're doing it from home. So they could, like, take a bigger trip and know that maybe a few of the days they have to work half day or part day or whole day, and then the other days they get off. So it's kind of like the new frontier, I think. You know, as sad as the pandemic is, I think it's a real healing in some ways. That's my spiritual take on it.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I'm going to stop the recording. And again, thank you. Hold on.